Hey guys, how's it going? Just getting started over here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to everybody who's already in the chat on Unity Connect. Great to see you all as usual. It's me, Matt Shell, your friendly neighborhood online evangelist. And tonight we are going to be talking about 2D game kits with my friend and colleague, Aurore Dimopoulos, who is also here with us in the chat. So let me just make sure that everything is going according to plan. All right, so let me know how my mic sounds. Tell me if you can hear me. The stream should be up. Let me know how I sound. I am broadcasting for you tonight from Brighton, England. You can see Aurora there in the chat. So she will introduce herself once the show starts, but she is the producer on the content team here in Brighton, and they have made for you this amazing and wonderful project. Some of you all may have seen the intro video, which I linked. Let me link it again, which gives a nice overview. Let's find it. Here it is. Introducing the 2D game kit. Ta-da. Put that in the main chat so you guys can see it. There you go. If you want to check that out while we're waiting. And let's also... Boop, boop. Ooh, nice. We've got Koichi Tamura in the chat with us. Let me turn down my speakers on my laptop. Welcome to Koichi. Great to see you again. Let me provide this. Whoops, that's not the link I want. This link is the link to the Learn site where, whoops, that's not what I want. Oh, I can't edit it either, can I? Oh yeah, I think I can. Hold on, let's see if I can fix that. So here on Connect, if you want to edit your post, you can do it by pressing up, similar to Skype or Slack. Thank you guys for the sound check. Glad to hear that it sounds okay. And so where's everybody checking in from tonight? I know that Koichi, aka Tam Tam, is in Japan. I'm in England. Where are you? Aurora is also in England, although not here with me. She is checking in from home. And just checking on the health of the stream. How's the stream coming in for you guys? No issues, I assume. It looks green on my end. Everybody getting good stream quality? Let me know. We're going to start in 5 minutes. You guys have a couple of links. Let me see. Download the project here. I'll provide a direct link for the game kit download in the main chat. I'm typing on this English keyboard, which is just slightly different from the American keyboards that I'm used to, so there may be typos. All right. So, for those of you guys who are just joining us, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at this 2D game kit project, which is a 2D platformer project created by the content team here at Unity, of which Aurora is the producer. And she is going to be walking you guys through how to get up and running with it and how you can prototype your 2D platformer ideas without writing any code. So this is definitely a session appropriate for beginners. If you're a little bit more advanced, the thing that I would encourage you to check out with this project, which I think is super, super cool, is all of the custom tooling that they've done in order to support the workflow in the project in Unity. So there's a bunch of really nice work with things like gizmos and editor scripts that provide for just a really cool authoring workflow. There's a piece of this that's built around TileMap. If you haven't seen TileMap, we've done some content around that over the past few months. So we're going to be using TileMap here. And basically, you've got a really nice little animated character and a whole bunch of assets that you can work with to build platformer levels and to play around with the mechanics in Unity without having to dive right into scripting, right? So it's a great way to get your feet wet and to do something fun and creative in Unity. And if you're a little bit intimidated by diving right into learning C#, this is a great place to start. Ooh, cool, we got some people in the chat. We've got Martin from Austria. Hello, wie geht's? We've got Ligan from India, Guillermo from Argentina, Marcel from Switzerland, Artur from Poland, Carlo from the Philippines. Nice. Carlo, I think you'll see that there are several other beginners here besides you, whether or not they're willing to identify themselves. They're certainly here. Hey, Domino from the UK, good to see you again. Welcome back. Welcome back to all the regulars. Always great to see you. And for anybody joining us for the first time, great to have you here. So we're going to be getting started in about 2 minutes. So the format for the session tonight, some of you guys have seen this before, but basically I've got a series of videos from Aurora that I'm going to play back. She's here with us in the chat to answer questions, and I believe that Pete Lee, who's the art director for the project, will also join us in the chat. We'll see if he pops up. And they will be able to answer any questions about the production process or the game kit itself. I'll also be here to answer general Unity questions and anything that you care to ask. We'll try to keep the chat on topic around the session material during the first 45 minutes or so, and then at the end we will have some time for a more open-ended discussion where you guys can ask some other questions as well. So the format is that I'm going to be rolling the clips of Aurora walking through the kit, and then we're all going to have a chat in the discussion here on Unity Connect, and then I'll also come onto the mic and just have a little short interlude between each piece where we can discuss and also answer any further questions that we have. Nice. We got Kevin from the USA, Lings from France. Very cool. Yeah, this should be a lot of fun. If you guys have not checked out the project yet, I strongly encourage you to do so. It's really, really neat. And there's just a ton of great assets in there, a ton of great code to look at. There's just a whole bunch of cool material. Okay, so it is the top of the hour. I am going to hand you into the capable hands of Aurora.
Hello, welcome to this session on the 2D Game Kit. My name is Aurora. I'm the producer on the content team at Unity. We're responsible for a lot of the tutorials on the website, as well as a lot of example projects that you can find for free on the Asset Store. We've created this kit, which is a collection of pre-made art and game elements that you can quickly get started with Unity and design a game without using any code. We're hoping that you'll get familiar and comfortable with the Unity concepts and workflow using this kit. And essentially, if you're a beginner, an artist, a designer, or anything in between really, hopefully this will get you more familiar and comfortable, as I said. If you're totally new to Unity, we recommend that you go through our interactive tutorials or interface essentials, which are on unity3d.com/learn. Our learning objectives today will be setting up a simple scene. We'll be dragging and dropping some objects into the scene and then creating some gameplay elements using our event system. And without further ado, let's get started and hop over to the editor. So I've opened up the project in the editor, and the first thing I've done is go to this scenes folder down here in the project view. This is where we house the full game that comes with the kit. So we've included a full game, we made it using the kit. So if you ever get stuck or need some ideas, you can look at our game example and see how things are put together. You can go to the start scene to get started right from the beginning, but I'm going to jump in at zone 3 here and press play. And so here you can see we've got some moving platforms. We've got some environmental hazards here that automatically cause me some damage. And Ellen is set up, ready to go. So later on we're going to be setting up some of those moving platforms. There's some health collection right here, but I need to go to the right to this other moving platform where I'm going to collect some weapons and then break some parts of the environment, which we'll also be looking at. And just a little bit later on, we'll be setting up some automatic enemies that attack you, as well as some key collection. So that's a little bit of the game kit. I'm not going to spoil the whole game because it takes a little while to play through. So let's go ahead and create a new scene that we can work in. So I'm going to go up to the top menu here and click on Kit Tools, and then click Create New Scene. This will open up this new scene creator window, and in new scene name, I'm just going to type in my level and hit create. And this will create a brand new scene, and this scene will be set up with a background. It will have our hero character Ellen here, and she's all set up with a camera and everything you need to get started. So you'll notice that this scene isn't actually in the scenes folder. Any new scene that you create using the Kit Tools menu will be in the root of the project. So if you click on where it says Assets here, that's where my level is. And you can see I've created a few new scenes already. So just to prove to you, if I press play, and when you do press play, when it goes into the game view, make sure that right here in the aspect menu, it's set to 16:9, and that will give you a good visual representation of what it will look like on the screen. So after creating that new scene, I can move around, I can jump, all the sounds are enabled, I can even attack pressing O to shoot and K to swipe with my staff. We've also included a debug menu, so if you press F12, this will bring up this little window here, where there's two buttons, one to enable melee attack and one to enable range attack. If I turn those off, she won't be able to shoot, so I'm pressing O and K and nothing is really happening. I want to make sure that these are enabled so I can test things quickly when I'm designing my game, so I'm going to leave those enabled. And to close this menu, it's just F12 again. Let's exit play mode and see how we can set up a simple level. So I'm going to use the Unity tile map. I'm going to go to Window, Tile Palette, and this will open up the Tile Palette window. So it's on this tile set rock water blockers here, and this isn't actually what I want. So I'm going to click on this menu and select the tile set game kit. And we provided you with two different tile sets. We've got this sort of rocky one and this grassy one. So I'm going to select this grassy one because it matches what I already have in the scene. So I'm going to just click it. And then in the scene view, I'm going to click and drag and draw out a kind of level that I would like. So all these tiles are set up so you can just draw everything out, and it knows what type of tile to already place because we've all set this up with a rule tile asset. So if I press play, I'll still be able to run around this level that I've just drawn out. I'm going to exit play mode and I'm going to close this tile palette window. And you can draw this at any point. So if you're in the middle of designing your game and you are not quite sure about the base environment, you can still open up that window and start drawing no matter if you've added extra game objects in or not. So now that we've created a level, let's look at adding some art and the project structure a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is move my hierarchy window next to the inspector. We're going to be doing a lot of dragging and dropping in this session, so I want to make it as easy as possible and not drag too far. So where it says hierarchy, I'm going to click and drag that to be next to the inspector, and I'm going to make it slightly smaller. Let's take a look at the project structure. In the project window, we have everything stored in folders. So we have an art folder, audio, documentation, which is where we keep the getting started guide, as well as the component reference guide, where you can look and see what all the settings mean. This is also available on the Learn site. So if you go to the project on the Learn site, you'll have the exact same thing there. We have the prefabs folder, which is where all of the gameplay elements are stored. We'll be going into that a bit later. And then the scenes folder, as we were previously in for the example game. I'm going to go back to the root of the project and open up a scene that I already made. So I'm going to just double click on it. And then this scene opens up. So I've created this scene exactly the same as I created the other scene, but it's quite bland. So if I want to add some art, I'm going to go into the project window. I'm going to expand the art folder. And then I'm going to click on sprites. And then we have everything more categorized into animated sprites, environment, interactables. And if I expand this out, I'm going to click on environment because I want to get some environment assets in here. So as you can see, we have a lot of assets. These are all the assets that make up the example game. So we have a lot of plants and foliage. We also have some nice statues here. I'm going to click and drag on this dropship and just put it into this scene view. I'm going to put it into place, and I think there is about good. So that's just a simple way of how you can get some art into the scene. We have a lot more art assets, so I can also put this statue maybe up here. Hopefully it doesn't get in the way for later. But that's basically it. We've got some hanging foliage which matches everything, so you can decorate a little bit of the edges as well.
Okay, great. So now we've got a look at kind of some of the core pieces of the game kit, right? And we looked at how we can build out level design using tile map. And if you haven't seen, we did a session on tile map a little while back. I'll link it in the chat. Actually using some other content from the content team in Brighton. Some cool pixelated sprites that we have with the character Penny Pixel, and you can check that out if you want to have kind of deeper dive on tile map and some of the 2D tools. But you can see it here integrated into a game example and get some ideas about how you can use it in this context. So I see that people seem to be following along okay. I don't see a bunch of questions from the chat yet. Feel free to post some there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the next piece, and then I'll respond to you guys via the chat if you have questions.
Now we're going to take a look at Ellen, who is our hero character, and how she's put together. And then we'll also look at putting in the first peril in our game level. So if I go to the hierarchy and click on Ellen, this is Ellen in the scene, and as you see here, she's got a lot of components that make her up. She's already set up and good to go, so you don't really need to change anything unless you want to start customizing, in which case you can look into the component reference and see what all the settings mean. One thing I'm going to point out here is that she already has a damageable component, and a damageable component means that she can receive damage from any other game object that has a damager. So this will be sort of one of the key aspects to causing her harm. Not that we'd want to, but that's part of the game. So let's look at adding in a little bit of peril. So I'm going to just go to the project window. I'm going to close up this art folder so it's not too long here, and I'm going to open up the prefabs folder, and I'm going to go into the environment folder. And in the environment folder, we've got two things that sort of environmental and cause her harm, we have some acid and some spikes. So I can click and drag some spikes into here, and these are already set up to cause her damage. If we look at the spikes, there is the damager component in the inspector there. So that will cause her damage. I'd like to fill this gap here, and I'm going to do that by adding in some acid. This acid is already set up, again, just to cause her damage. If I scroll down in the inspector, we have the damager here as well. So one thing that I want to do with this water is take a look at the water area component in the inspector. And here I can actually change the size. So it's a little bit too small and it doesn't quite fit. It's a bit awkward. So I'm just going to place it around about the middle there. And in the size option in the water area script, I'm going to click and drag on where it says X and just resize this a little bit. And then I'm going to click and drag on Y. And I think that might be a bit good. I'm going to just lower this. And if I press play, I should be able to walk into the spikes and into the acid and cause her some damage. So pressing play. If I walk into the spikes, she already receives damage, and you can see that we have a UI element here that sort of signifies her health, and that's already set up and ready to go. If I go in there, everything is set up and ready to go. So we need to put a gameplay element to get over this. So as we saw in the example scene, we're going to include a moving platform.
Okay, awesome. So as you can see, right, we can start to integrate some of the prefab elements from the project, right? I was just about to post in the chat. I love how gross that acid looks. And there's some cool little handles on there so that you can get it sized to fit nicely and it still looks good, right, without stretching and stuff. So super cool there. We've seen how we can add damage to the character, right, by adding a damager component. And we'll see some more interactions with that system as we go forward. So as the chat seems to be kind of progressing nicely, we've got Will Goldstone in the chat. Everybody wave to Will. Will is a longtime participant and supporter of the Game Kit project. So super nice to have you here, Will. And yeah, if you guys have questions about the architecture of the project or the production process or the creative behind it, feel free to ask Aurora and Will, who are here with us in the chat. I'm going to jump us into the next segment, and I will continue to be there with you guys if you have any questions.
Let's find the moving platform. So I'm going to exit play mode. And still in our prefabs folder, I'm going to go into interactables. And interactables just holds everything that you can interact in the game. It's all our little gameplay elements. We've got a pass-through platform, pushable box, switches and doors and teleporters. This is where sort of all of your gameplay elements live. So let's look at the moving platform. I'm going to find it here. It's right here. So I'm going to click and drag this into the scene and into position. And as you can see, there's some extra gizmos here that you may not have seen with the other aspects that we've clicked and dragged. These are some custom gizmos that we've created, so it signifies the direction and the destination of the moving platform. So as you can see, this red dotted line, this is where it will travel to, and this transform gizmo is where it will end up. So if we move this to about here, if we look at the inspector, we have a moving platform component that carries all the settings for this platform. So in preview position, there is a movable slider that previews where this goes. So if I scrub this back and forth, you can see it moving in the scene view. So it's a good indication of where it's going to end up. I don't think that's quite high enough, so I'm going to change this position here and preview again. And I think that's where I would like to have it. I might position this a little higher. There we go. So I think that's fine. So when we press play, it will automatically start moving as the start moving option is clicked to enable. So if I press play, the moving platform will automatically start moving. Now it's a little bit slow for me. I'd like to go it a little bit faster, so I'm going to exit play mode. This is important to exit play mode when you make changes in the inspector, because if you make them during play mode, they won't save. So I've exited play mode, and now back in the inspector in the moving platform script, if we look at the speed, it's currently 2. So if I want to make it faster, I'm going to double it and put it to 4, press play. And now it's roughly double the speed as it was before. So I think that speed is about right, just so we're not wasting any time to get up to this platform.
Okay, awesome. So we can see, right, how we can start to build in some moving platforms and other features of our level. And like I was saying earlier before we started the stream, I really like the way that the tools for authoring this are built into the project. And I think for those of you guys who are programmers, right, you can see some of the work done with the gizmos and the little dotted lines, right? And this is an awesome example of how you can create tooling for the non-programmers on our team, on your team, to be able to author in the editor and create great stuff, right? So if you're somebody who's like a little more familiar with programming and building tools, I encourage you to check out some of the stuff in the project as well, because there's some really, really great functionality there. Okay, let's see what else is cooking in the chat. Yeah, I'm also, Will says he's keen to see for someone to download and go nuts and make some crazy setups that are tough to speedrun. I'm also eager to see what kind of the level design folks will make out of all this stuff. I think that's going to be super duper cool. Domino is asking if there are Unity standards or guidelines with regard to the naming conventions of assets subdirectories. I mean, we have a kind of internal template that we like to use that you can see in a lot of the projects distributed through the Learn site and the asset store, which, you know, feel free to adopt yourself, but it really is a personal workflow type of question. Whatever kind of form of organization works for you and your team, right, that you guys all agree on and stick to, I think is going to be, you know, is going to be a good choice. We just try to be consistent with ours. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? Rather than any one single system. I favor stuff that's readable, right? I don't like shortcuts or acronyms. Stuff that's readable, that somebody can look at and understand what it is. And then just, yeah, keep things kind of organized the way you like. Okay, cool. So folks seem to be doing okay. No major questions yet. So let's continue.
Next, let's take a look at some environmental blockers we can put here. So I'm going to put in some destructible objects, and I'm going to trigger a door with a pressure pad. So first, let's take a look at the destructible objects. We have 2. We have this sort of destructible column here, and I'm just going to delete that. And we also have this destructible wall. So this is a bit chunkier, and I think I like this one best, so I'm going to put that here. Now let's take a look at the destructible wall in the hierarchy. So as you can see, when I've got this selected, there's not really any components here. And this is because for the destructible objects, we need to open them up. So I'm going to click on the arrow to expose its children. And on the destructible wall hole, this is where all the options and components live. You might recognise that it also has a damageable component, so this is sort of the same across anything that needs to receive damage. So this wall is actually destructible, it needs to receive damage, and when it receives damage, the sprites will change and sort of destruct and show you that. So first, let's look at its starting health. It's currently set to 5, which means if I hit it 5 times, it will destruct. So let's take a look at that. jump on the moving platform, and I need to hit it with my staff. So pressing K, 5 hits, and it destroys. So Ellen does 1 hit of damage for every staff swipe and every bullet that comes out of her gun. So I'm going to exit play mode now. Now this takes a little bit of a long time, so if I reduce this to 2, if I hit it twice, then it will change into the broken pile of rubble, and then I also run and die at the same time because I'm really great at platformers. So if I'm hitting this, there we go, that took 2 swipes. So I'm going to get out of play mode again. I think that's fine. Let's move on to block her path once again, and I'm going to add in a door. So I'm still in the interactables folder in the project view, and I'm going to click and drag into the scene this door here. I think I'm going to put it here, and I think that's good right there. Cool, so Ellen won't be able to get past this door at all. Now this door is just a door, nothing will happen. When we walk up to it, it will just block her path. One thing I'm going to do just for quick testing is move Ellen's position. So when I start and press play, I don't have to run through the whole game to test a mechanic that I've just made. So to do this, let's look at the hierarchy and find Ellen and click on her. And then I'm going to control click on cameras. And this will make sure that when I press play, the camera will start in the correct position. I'm going to just click on her transform and then move her into position. I'm going to zoom in and place her about there. There we go. So just a quick test by pressing play. The camera and Ellen should spawn in the correct place. So I don't have to carry on do this. All the gameplay is still active. It still works. I've just moved Ellen and the camera. So I'm going to exit play mode, and I'm going to activate this door with a pressure pad. So let's look at the pressure pad, still in the interactables folder. There's the pressure pad. I'm going to click and drag that in. This can be a little bit fiddly with positioning, so I think that's okay. If I press play now and test this, I'll be able to step on this pressure pad. And stepping on it will activate a sound, the button will light up, but nothing will happen. And that's because it doesn't know that it needs to open a door. The door doesn't have anything connected to it. It's just 2 separate objects. So let's link these objects with the event system. I'm going to exit play mode and take a look at the pressure pad in the inspector. I'm going to scroll all the way down, and here you can see we have a pressure pad component. This holds all the settings for what the pressure pad can do. So we can see that there's the type of items that can be on there, how many items needs to be on there for it to be activated. And once it's activated, it calls this on pressed event here. So when it's pressed, it will change the sprite so it looks lit up, and it will play a sound. So another thing that we want to happen when we press on this is we want the door to open. The way the door opens in this project is it plays an animation. So let's look at doing that now. I'm going to add an event here by pressing the plus button. And I'm going to find the door in the hierarchy, click and drag that into this empty slot here. And now this has changed to say no function. One thing to note when you're clicking and dragging something from the hierarchy into the inspector is that if you just click it, you will start inspecting the door. So what we want to make sure is that we actually click and drag and not just single click. So looking at the pressure pad, I'm going to scroll back down after showing you that. We need to play an animation. So we are going to click this option here. And here are all the different sort of types of functions we can do. So we want to look at the animator. And here in the animator, we have a bunch of functions that we can trigger. And what we're interested in is playing an animation. So we need to find the play string. And string is important because what it's going to do is look at the file names of different animations, and we need to match that file name. But how do we know which file names to plug into here? So we have a folder filled with animations. If we go to our project view and we go to art and expand that, we have, I'm just going to close this sprites folder just so it's nice and tidy. If we expand the animations folder, we have an interactables folder, and this matches the prefab structure. So if you have an interactables prefab, chances are its animations or art will be stored in an interactables folder in the corresponding section. So I'm going to click on this, and here we have door closing, door open, close, and door opening is actually the one I want. So if we click on this, we can inspect it and see how it's spelt. So it's door opening. So the function will look for this specific word to trigger this animation. So if I go back to the pressure pad here in the hierarchy and scroll down, and in the empty slot here, if I type in door opening and press play, when I step on this pressure pad, an animation will play and a sound will play and the door will open. And now Ellen can get through to the next part.
Okay, awesome. So this is where things kind of start to get really exciting for me. Just this capacity to use these different elements and connect them together. And we're going to see a couple of other examples there. And one of the things that I really like about the way that this is designed is that we're using, as you kind of get more familiar with Unity, you'll see that there are a whole number of other features in Unity that you're going to access in the same way. Like, for example, if you're going to set up a button for your user interface, you're going to have a similar type of behavior. When the button is clicked, you're going to call a function which does something on another object or a piece of code. So this is kind of a great way to enter into designing that kind of interactivity through the inspector. And I just think I love these kind of things that you can plug together and make cool stuff happen. So let's take a look at the chat. Let's see. Okay, not too many questions. There's a couple folks making some comments about the way that the video is displayed in Connect. We're aware of it. It's not something that I'm totally satisfied with yet either. Our shift over to Connect in using Connect as a streaming platform is still relatively new. So any feedback that you have about the process, we're quite open to hear. And we're in regular communication with the Connect team inside of Unity in terms of how we can improve the platform. So definitely, if you have notes about that, please leave them in the chat, and I'm always happy to hear those and pass those on. But yeah, I would like to see a situation where we can kind of use the screen real estate a little bit better for the video in the chat, and that's something that we are actively working on. All of our developers are on vacation for the Lunar New Year in China, so right now we're waiting for them to come back, and then when they do, hopefully we'll be able to make some changes there. So watch this space. Let's see what else we've got. Let's see. Any ideas on 2018 shader graph and visual scripting? I know if it's off topic, but curious. Yeah, happy to discuss that at the end of the session. We've definitely got stuff coming, especially on shader graph quite soon. And we will be doing some content to cover those. So watch this space. Let's see. Dimitri has a question. I noticed that the door opening file had some options in the inspector. So if you want to change those only for a specific door, how do you go about doing that? No, this hasn't been answered. And actually, let's see what Aurora has to say about that, because I don't know the answer to that. My guess is, because it's based off the animation, that probably you would want to make a copy of the asset, because it will probably be based on the asset. But let's see what Aurora has to say about that. And in the meantime, we're going to continue onward.
Next, we'll take a look at adding some enemies and killing them creatively with something that's not Ellen's gun or staff. We'll also look at adding a health pickup because we're likely to lose some health in this area. So I'm going to exit play mode. I'm going to move Ellen past this puzzle so we can quickly test things out. So once again, in the hierarchy, I'm going to click on Ellen and control click on cameras. And with the move tool, I'm going to move her just past this puzzle so I don't have to play parts of the game to show you what I need to show you. So let's look at the project view. And I'm going to close this art folder and I'm going to go open up prefabs and look at the enemies folder. And here we've got two enemies. We have Chomper and we have Spitter. Chomper is a melee enemy and he's pretty cute. But when you get into his field of view, if I press play and test, he walks back and forth and then he lunges at you and bites you. So I'm going to exit play mode. And I'm not going to use Chomper here, so I'm going to just select him in the hierarchy and press delete to remove him. I am going to put Spitter in though. So Spitter is very much the same, except he doesn't like moving. He doesn't move at all, but he does launch a projectile at you. So if I press play to show you what he does, if I move forward and I'm in his detection zone, he sort of launches these balls of goop at you. So one thing you've noticed when I've dragged in these prefabs is this large green circle that is both on Chomper and Spitter. So one thing you'll notice when I've dragged in Chomper and Spitter is this large green circle here. So on our Spitter, it looks a little bit like a Pac-Man, and this is where he can see you. So this is sort of his field of view and his distance of view. So taking a look at Spitter in the inspector, if I scroll down, I have this enemy behavior component here, and these are all the settings to do with the enemy's behavior. These are the same for both Chomper and Spitter, they're just set up slightly differently. So this is why you'll see, even though it's on Spitter, we have some melee attack data as well as ranged attack. He's using ranged attack, melee attack wouldn't really affect him that much. So what I want to take a look at and show you is the scanning settings in the enemy behavior component. There's a view direction, which changes the direction of his vision. And there's the view field of view, which is the FOV here. And that changes sort of how wide he can see. So I don't think he can look behind me because his eyes are kind of facing forward. So I'm going to change that to about 182 degrees or use the slider there. He also has a view distance, which is how far away he can see. I don't think he can see this far away, so I'm going to just change that to here. And I'm also going to orient the direction up because I want him to see me about here for what I want to show you. So now I'm going to add something a little bit different to kill him because he's in this sort of precarious position being below me. I'm going to add a pushable box. So in the prefabs folder, if I go back to interactables, I have a pushable box prefab that I can just click and drag into the scene. I'm going to move this sort of on the edge so it doesn't take too long for me to push it. And after I've added this in, if I press play, Ellen will automatically start pushing the box. But if I push it to the edge and it lands on him, it just kind of bobbles there. It doesn't really do anything, and it's not set up to do anything right now. What I can do is, considering that Spitter also, if I take a look at him, he also has a damageable component. And this means, again, that he can receive damage. So this is how he receives damage from Ellen. His starting health is 1, so if we hit him once, he will die. I want to make sure that the pushable box can give damage to this damageable component. If we take a look at the pushable box, it doesn't have any damager components on it. What I can do is add this. So let's take a look at the box. And in the inspector, if I hit add component and type in damage, I'd already typed it in earlier, so you can see it's already set there. We have this damageable component here, and the damager. What we want is the damager, so we're going to click on that. And in the scene view, you can see this green box, which is a collider. And this is the collider that signifies where it's going to give damage. So it's kind of like in an offset position here. It's got these green dots on each edge. What I can do is, in the scene view, click and drag on these green dots and reposition this to where the box is. So you can see the transform gizmo is in the way here. So I'm going to just press Q to get rid of that and then click and drag this to the bottom. I'm going to just overlap it to the bottom to make sure it does definitely collide with our spitter. I think that's about right. Cool. So let's take a look in the inspector, and in the damager component, we have this hittable layers right here. Everything is split out into layers so we can tell different objects of different categories what to do and receive. So if we look at Ellen, click on Ellen in the hierarchy and scroll up in the inspector, I can see that she's on the player layer. And if I take a look at Spitter's prefab, we can see that he's on the enemy layer. So going back to the pushable box and scrolling down to the damager component, right now it's not going to cause any damage to anything because no layers are selected. If I hit everything, this means it will cause damage to everything, so any layer. If I press play and Ellen touches this box, it will cause her damage, which is the opposite of what we want. What we want to do is only set this to cause damage to enemies. So I'm going to select nothing again just to clear the selection. And then I'm going to click on the enemy layer, which is here. Now when I press play and push the box, this will cause damage to our spitter and it's killed him. But it doesn't cause any damage to Ellen. If you'd increase the amount of starting health that Spitter has, don't forget to increase the amount of damage that the box has. Right now they're all set to 1 health and 1 damage. Right, so since we're kind of like in a perilous situation here where we're probably going to lose some health, let's look at adding a health pickup. This is fairly simple. We've got a health pickup prefab in the interactables folder, and we just need to click and drag this into the scene. And what this will do is give 1 health when Ellen walks into it. If she doesn't have any lost health though, it won't do anything. So if I'm really skilled and don't receive any damage here, which I just did. But because I've received damage, she's now able to collect some health automatically. If I start again and try and skill it and not receive any damage, it won't break and give me damage. So it always knows whether to give you damage, whether to give you health or not. So that's already set up for you. Here you can see in the health pickup component, the setting for health amount is 1. If you wanted to give it more health or be able to give it more health, then you'd increase that to whatever you'd like if you increased Ellen's health and 1 isn't enough to give her.
Okay, awesome. So as you can see, right, this is, I feel like, another really cool aspect of the system here where we have this capacity to not just add a damager component, right, which would damage everybody, but also then to specify what elements in the game, right, based on layer, are going to be damaged. A couple of other folks remarking on the FOV visualization in the editor. So this is all stuff that's available in the project. You can look at the source. I believe that's going to be in the editor scripts folder because it's running at edit time. And basically we're just drawing custom gizmos in the editor, which is really actually not that hard to do. It's something that even I, with my relatively limited programming skills, have done a little bit. There's a bunch of functions in the API where you can draw like wireframe spheres and various like primitive shapes using the onDraw gizmos function, and I can link to the documentation for that. And yeah, someone was asking, could we have that so it would kind of represent like a more accurate line of sight? You definitely could do that, but that would be a little bit more complicated than what's here, right? This is really just drawing some shapes in the editor, not necessarily interacting with the level. But yeah, I feel like this is another awesome example of just making small, relatively simple tools, right, that make it easier for your non-programmers, right, for your designers, for your artists to really get in there and be able to control gameplay, design gameplay, fine-tune things without having to go through like a long loop of, running the game, testing the functionality. Here they can really just see. Somebody says, Ellen killed that cute animal. I know it was cute, huh? But it got squashed. Yes, those chompers are very cute, though. I like them. Yeah, so as Armin says, the code contains several well-written Gizmo and GUI controls. Thanks for sharing this. It's a fantastic example for all future projects. Hooray! Mission accomplished, right? This is definitely one of the things that we're trying to do. Obviously, this is something that's super useful for beginners who want to get started in prototype. But I would say even if you're a little bit more advanced, take a look at this. There's some really, really great stuff in there. Tons of fun stuff to play with and just ways to think about your workflow, right? How are you structuring content in the editor, and how are you building tools for other members of your team or yourself, right, if you're a solo developer. Okay, great. Let's see what we've got. Some folks asking, can these functions, Dwayne is asking, can these functions be adapted to a 2.5D game, 3D models in a 2D perspective? In many, many aspects of this can, but I would also encourage you to look out because there is a 3D game kit being planned and actively worked on, right, which is going to contain a kind of a similar approach, obviously, but with 3D assets. So watch this space for that. You could certainly pull a lot of this stuff and definitely kind of some of the concepts and architecture out and apply them to a 3D game, but this is definitely a 2D game kit, as the name implies. Yes, Thomas Yost is asking, the Gizmo-related code can just remain there for production builds because it's never going to be called outside of the editor. That's right. Yeah, this has no impact on your runtime, right? This is not going to incur overhead because it's just drawing to the scene view. It's not drawing to the game view. All right, cool. Some folks talking about Brackeys. I highly recommend Brackeys as well. He's someone who we fully support at Unity, makes amazing content. I definitely encourage you to check him out. Makes great content on YouTube. Ligan S asks, from an artist point of view, can I make a complete game with this kit? Absolutely. Yeah, go nuts. That's part of the point, right? Further question about GUI. Yes, there is some GUI stuff in here which can be edited. You're actually going to see that in a bit. Let's see. Chad is asking if the 2D kit is only for 2018 Unity. I'm guessing that this is built on 2017.3, but Aurora can speak to that version question. All right, we have a comment about the footprint taking some time to import. Yeah, that seems longer than I would hope for. That's definitely on the long side. But, I would say this is a part of the idea of this package, right, is that it's a whole bunch of assets, right? So importing assets does take time. I'm assuming that was like probably, usually it's the textures that take a long time to do that. But you may want to look at something that's less asset heavy if the footprint is like the major concern. Rolando, this session will be. Oh, the chat is heating up. Rolando, this session will be up later this week on YouTube, and there will be an immediate archive of the live session with the talking. But then the edited videos will be up on YouTube later this week. Yeah, I encourage you guys to check out 2017.3. There's a whole bunch of cool stuff in there, including this kit is designed for it. So yeah, and this does use some of the new features, right? Tile map being a great example. Okay, before I talk too much, let's continue on with our next segment.
Next, we'll take a look at adding another moving platform, but jazzing up its path a bit and activating it with a switch. So firstly, I'm going to move Ellen and the camera again. So I'm going to select Ellen and control click on cameras. Make sure the transform tool is enabled with W and just move her past this. Now, Spitter isn't going to give us any trouble here because if I select Spitter, his field of view isn't where I am. So he's looking over here in this green area and I'm just past that. So he's not going to attack me in any way. So I'm going to be safe while I'm testing this mechanic. So let's add a moving platform, and just like before in the Interactables folder, here's the moving platform. And I'm just going to click and drag it here. That looks about right. And just as before, we have its direction and destination, except there's just one here, and I want to add another direction and another destination. The way I can do that is in the moving platform, and in its component, we can see a setting for add node. So if I click on this, this adds another little gizmo, transform gizmo, right here in the scene view. And if I pull that away, you can see another dotted line. So if I just leave it there and then go back to preview position and move my slider, you can see that it will have another destination. Once it reaches there, it changes direction. So I actually want to put this here and preview that again. And that's going a bit too far. So I'm going to move it here. That should be okay. Just about, almost. That should be fine. Now I can add multiple nodes, and if I just keep clicking add node, it just creates more of these little paths here. But I want to get rid of these because I just want the two, and the way to do that here is your nodes list just underneath the button. And if I click delete node 4 and delete node 3, I'm just left with the two that I had before. So that's all well and good, and it's going to start moving as soon as I press play, which is fine for now. But what if I wanted to make it a little bit more complex and trigger it via shooting a switch? So I can set this up fairly similarly to how the door and the pressure pad is set up. In the Interactables folder in the project window, I have this single use switch, which means it's a switch that I can just use once. So as soon as it's been shot, that's it. You can't shoot it again. It doesn't trigger anything. And if I press play now, and since it's quite a bit smaller, I'm going to have to press S to duck and then O to hit the switch. It doesn't really do much. Like, it just lights up, it plays a sound and plays like a small particle effect, but it doesn't affect the moving platform, just like the pressure pad didn't affect the door. So we need to set this up and call another event. So I'm going to exit play mode. And now with the single use switch selected in the hierarchy, let's scroll down in the inspector and take a look at this interact on trigger 2D. So this will take its collider, and as soon as something hits the collider, it will trigger these on enter events. So when something enters the collider. You'll notice that it also has a layers, and it's set to the bullet layer. So every bullet that Ellen fires with her gun is set to the bullet layer, and that means when she shoots something, it's on the bullet layer, and that will trigger the on enter events. So in these events, when a bullet goes into the collider, the sprite switches and it plays a sound and some particles. And we've got some empty event slots here for you to fill into. So let's get the platform moving when we shoot this switch. So we already have an empty event here, so we don't need to add the plus button. So I'm going to grab the moving platform, and because it's a duplicate name, it's added a 1 next to it. So I know this is the second one that I've added in here. So if I click and drag on the moving platform into the empty slot, now it knows to trigger an event for it, but we haven't set a function to call just yet. So if we click on this, we can see that there is a moving platform. It's taken the components that are on the moving platform and put them in here. So in the moving platform, we have a start moving. And if you remember, that is the same as the start moving option we have. So if I go back to this moving platform just to quickly show you, in the moving platform, there is the start moving button and it's currently on. We want to turn this off first. So when we press play, it doesn't move. So here it's not moving. But just because we've dragged the moving platform into the event doesn't mean that it will start moving, because we haven't set a function to it. So right now it's not doing anything. So I'm going to exit play mode and go back to the single use switch, scroll down to the on trigger enter. Oh, sorry, the interact on trigger 2D. That's a different component right there. And then in the function, back in the moving platform, we can put start moving. And this will set start moving to true and it will enable it. So if I press play and shoot the switch, the platform starts moving and it will move in the direction that I set earlier. And I'm going to exit play mode.
So this is, as I was saying in the chat, this is like one of my favorite parts of this system, right? Is where we can start to do this kind of like interesting connecting up of different systems, right? Where we can have a gun that we shoot a switch and then it starts a platform moving, right? This is where we're really starting to get into some fun tools for game design, right? Where you can really start to get creative and connect different things together to make your own, you know, puzzles and levels and all this kind of stuff that I'm really hoping to see some people kind of dig into and make some fun things with. So yeah, I hope that you guys get a chance to play around with that. Let me take a look at the chat. Okay, cool. People seem to be pretty clear. Yeah, Will Goldstone linked a blog post about the Unity Hub, which we strongly encourage you to check out. Super, super cool. Basically, if you, like me, have multiple versions of Unity on your machine and want to manage those, super useful for that. And we're also going to be kind of putting some useful information there in the hub. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, sorry, my mic cord pulled out. I'm actually streaming not from my usual streaming setup, so I'm like not totally ergonomically configured here. I was saying something before I unplugged myself and I totally forgot what it was. Oh yes, the Unity Hub. Check it out. It's linked there in the chat, and I highly recommend it. Yes, and Aurora, yes, we can see your replies being quoted in the middle. Thank you for doing that. All good. Abdel is asking if this has tools for 2D particles. It has some 2D particle systems in it. You'll see in the next video there's a piece with some 2D particles. However, the particle system already is pretty well, it's got some complexity, but it's pretty user-friendly in terms of being able to interact with it outside of code. So I don't think it would be a huge challenge to add some further particle stuff to this. And yeah, as Will points out, the Unity 2018.1 Beta 8 just arrived today, and you can download that using the Unity Hub. Definitely encourage you to check that one out. There's so much cool stuff coming in 2018.1, right? Some of this you guys have probably been hearing about. Shader graph, scriptable render pipeline, some of the new tools for the C# job system and the entity component system starting to roll out. Just so many goodies. Pro Builder, right? If you guys saw the announcement, Pro Builder is now available as part of Unity. Pro Builder has joined Unity, and we've made Pro Builder currently available for free via the Asset Store. So if you haven't seen that, do check that out. Speaking of tools for artists and level designers, super, super powerful, fun modeling tool that you can use to mock up geometry in Unity without having to go back and forth to a DCC package. Highly recommend that you check that out. What are folks asking? Do you plan, Thomas Yost asks, do you plan a session on the code and architecture of the 2D kit? Would be really nice. I just was saying this to Aurora that we should do this today as we were planning for this session. So no promises, but watch this space. Could also be something that we discuss in an article context or a blog post, right? Since it's code focused. That might be a nice way to deliver that information as well. I know it's something I personally would love to see because, yeah, tons of cool stuff here for the more advanced programmer audience. So, yeah, I'd love to see that too. Let's watch this space and see how that goes. Domino says that the 2018.1 beta 8 on Linux arrived today too. Awesome. Let's see. Dimitri asked, probably unanswerable from just the chat, but how do you get the moving platform to rotate once it hits a certain node or start rotating once it does? I'm going to go ahead and say I don't know. Do they even rotate the platforms now? That might be some custom behavior that you need to write. Chad asks, is Unity Hub a separate app that manages installs of Unity versions? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's basically what it is. Okay, let me not talk too much. We're coming up on 9 o'clock where I am. Let's check out the last segment in the presentation, and then we'll have some more time for questions.
All right, so in this kit, we've also provided an inventory system. Let's take a look at the inventory system now. If we select Ellen and scroll all the way down in the inspector, we have an inventory controller, and this controls what Ellen can collect. So we can see that she has several keys that she can collect, and she's already holding a staff and a gun. So these are already set up for the way that they're set up for the game. So in the game example, you can collect 3 keys to open a door and eventually collect a staff and a gun. So I'm going to just quickly, with Ellen selected, I'm going to control click on cameras and move Ellen to this top area here, just so I can quickly test that game design that I'm going to show you now. So let's add a key into this environment. So I'm going to click and drag from the interactables folder in the project window and add the key. So now that we have the key added in, it's just an object. If we look at the inspector, there's nothing special about it. It's just set up as a regular object. If we press play and just run into it, nothing will happen. It's just an object. It has a nice floating animation, and that's about it. To make sure that Ellen's inventory controller expects this key to be collected, we need to make the key an inventory item. And the way we do this is with the key selected in the hierarchy, in the inspector, let's click on Add Component and start typing in inventory, if I'd spelt it right, inventory. And here we can see the inventory controller and inventory item. So I want the inventory item because it is an item for the inventory. Now we can see this big green circle that's sort of surrounding the key. This is actually the key's collider. So when Ellen walks into this area, that's how we know that she's walked into it and can collect it. This is very large right now. It's not the size of the key, so I want to make it the size of the key. In the inspector, on the circle collider 2D, I can select this radius option and click and drag this down a bit so it's about the size, I think that'll do, about the size of the key. There we go. So the inventory item has this inventory key. Now let's not get confused with this being a key. This isn't the same as the object. This is expecting a unique identifier, so a specific word that we set up for Ellen's inventory to recognise the object. So let's take a look at Ellen and see what she expects. So if we click on Ellen in the hierarchy, scroll down again to the inventory controller, we can see here that in the sections we have key 1 and then the word key here. And this key 1 should match. If I change this to key, it also changes what it is in here. But I want to keep it at key 1. So again, this is the unique identifier that we set for it to recognise an object with the same name. So if we go to staff, the staff also has a unique identifier, and that's staff. And so we want to make sure that the physical key that we have in the scene has the same unique identifier of key 1. So let's go back to the key game object. And in the inventory key, I'm going to type in key 1. Here we go. And right now it's got another layers option. So anything can collect this. Anything that has an inventory controller can collect this, which isn't what we want. So imagine if we put an inventory controller on a chomper and it walked past, it would be able to collect the key, which is definitely not what we want. We want to have the key. So if I select nothing to clear all the selections and then select the player, then Ellen will be able to collect it. However, if we play, nothing happens. So I think this is being collected in her inventory, but I don't actually know that for a fact. There's no feedback here for the player. So I'm going to exit play mode and trigger some events that happen. The first thing I'm going to do is trigger a sound. So triggering a sound for this is slightly different than earlier. If it's an inventory item, there's a clip option here, which is expecting an audio clip. And we can find audio clips in the project view. And if we go to expand the audio and the interactables folder, these are all the audio clips associated with interactables. And what I want is, there's no single one for a key specifically, but there is a generic pickup sound. So I'm going to click and drag this in. And now when I press play, when I collect this, it should play that generic pickup sound. So let's connect this to something actually happening when we've collected it in the inventory. So usually the stereotypical thing is collecting a key to open a door, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to exit play mode, and I'm going to grab a door from the interactables folder, and I'm going to put it just next to it, just so we can see. Now, right now, just as before with the pressure pad, when we walk over and collect this, we can hear the sound, but the door doesn't open. So I'm going to exit play mode and look at Ellen's inventory controller again. I'm going to scroll down right to the bottom, and here is the event when key 1 is added. So on add, I'm going to press the plus button to add something to the list, and I'm going to drag the door into the empty slot. And just like before with the pressure pad, I'm going to find the animator section and the play string function. And in that, I'm going to type in door opening again. And now when I collect the key, when it lands in her inventory, it should trigger that animation. So collect the key, and now it's opening the door. So we just need to do one last thing to indicate that the key has been collected. You'll notice that when we actually run into it, it doesn't disappear, and a good indication to the player that it's been collected, other than an action happening, is if the key doesn't appear anymore. So let's select the key, And in its inventory item, we have an option to disable on enter. And this will turn off the object as soon as you walk into it and collect it. So if I press play now, when I walk into it, it's going to disappear. And that looks a bit better for the player, so they know that they've actually collected the key. But if I was to have this door somewhere else in my level and my key somewhere else in my level, there's another thing we can do just to indicate to the player that we have the key still collected. We can do this with adding some UI. So I'm going to exit play mode, and in the project window, still in the prefabs folder, we have UI prefabs. And these are a bunch of UI elements that we've already set up. And what we're looking for is the key canvas. Don't get confused with the key icon, that's just an individual icon. We want a canvas to display over our screen. So I'm going to click and drag this key canvas into the UI section in the hierarchy. Now this sectioning doesn't actually affect anything, it's just so we can keep things nice and tidy. If we end up having a fairly large level with a lot of objects, we can quickly find what we need. Now if I press play, I have these sort of empty slots on the top right. And if I walk into the key now, it automatically detects that a key has been collected. The way it does this is by using that same unique identifier that the inventory does. So if we look at the key canvas in the inspector, we have a key UI component here, and we have key names. So here we've got some separate elements. So this is just a bucket of options that it's kind of looking for. So here we've got key 1, and when key 1 is collected, it will display that changed icon. We also have, since we have an example game with 3 keys to collect, we've got key 2 and key 3. We can actually remove these and stop them from displaying for this level. The way to do that is where it says element 1, we're going to right click and delete array element. And then on element 1 again, this just moves up the list. We're going to delete array element. And now we're just left with one key that it's expecting. So if I press play now, we should have one icon in the top right. And when we collect it, that one icon will be filled.
Okay, awesome. So as you can see, some super powerful capability there in terms of getting the... Whoops, I just realized I have an issue. Okay, hold on. Some super powerful capability with the health system and the UI. I need to solve one thing right here. So actually, please stand by for a second, and I will be right back. Okay, so let me just see how folks are doing in the chat here. Thank you, Chad, for your kind words on the hover racer tutorial. We had a Will says, imagine some hold music, folks. Do 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 do. I can provide that for you guys. No, I just realized that there is an issue with the last clip that I need to show you guys, so I'm just setting that up real quick. But we can chat while I do that. For somehow that got corrupted or something like that. It wasn't playing correctly, so I'm going to sort that out. You can you can hear the crazy fans on my laptop turning on in the background, perhaps, but it should just take a moment, so we'll be fine. Okay, let's see what folks are discussing. So Thomas Yost says, in the game, I think in scene 1 or 2, there's a small video-like sequence when collecting the key. It focuses the camera on the door, which is open, and then back on Ellen. How is that implemented? So, yeah, if you guys have not seen yet, we recently released a edition for Cinemachine focused on 2D. I covered it a little bit in the 2D world building session. We looked at adding a confiner and a 2D follow camera, so that could be a place to start. And if you're not familiar with Cinemachine generally, it's a super powerful procedural camera system, which allows you to create some really interesting and complex behavior if needed, or just to do kind of smart cameras. I'm assuming, I don't actually know, I think Will is answering down here. Okay, let me just read. Yeah, so basically animating the focus of the camera via timeline, and basically just play a timeline that will then have a Cinemachine track and swap between some virtual cameras is a guess. Let me just catch up here. Ligon S, I think you could have achieved the same result by changing the size parameter in the of the array, but I think just in this case, this is just like maybe a more clear user experience, right, to do it that way. So yeah. Alrighty. Okay. So Dimitri is asking, it appears to me that at least here, most of the coding you do is, is to create a system which you then use to make your game. I thought that system was a role fulfilled by a game engine. Is that just something done for this kit since its purpose is educational? Or is that an indication for game development in general? Whoa, yeah, interesting question. As Will points out, it is indeed a big topic. So I think sometimes people can maybe have a different expectation about what a game engine should be doing for you. The kind of core purpose of a game engine is to provide very fundamental functionality, right? Like supporting a scripting language, rendering graphics to the screen, playing back audio. And then as engines start to grow more complex, you're going to build and layer functionality on it. An engine and game engines could be many things to many people, right? Folks, like, for example, an in-house game engine that somebody built, let's say, to make a single game, which was a much more common practice kind of historically, probably would have had more game-specific tooling in it. Now that we're kind of moving into an era of game engines in which Unity exists, we have kind of multi-purpose tools that serve many, many people's needs, right? So we have like almost a kind of an abstraction that has been kind of a layer of abstraction, right, that's been created with regard to engines. And so the amount of specific functionality that's supported has changed, right? So in terms of oops, okay, hold on. You might lose my mic for a sec. Let me just make sure this works. So Unity supports a lot more out of the box, but it's designed to allow you to create any type of game, right? A 3D game, a 2D game, a puzzle game, a first-person shooter, a networked game, a single-player game, right? So we are trying to create tools that are going to be useful for the widest number of people. And then this project, I think, serves as an awesome example of how you can build tools that are going to support more game-specific workflows. Okay, I might disappear for a second as I queue up this next clip. So if I do, forgive me.
The last thing I'd like to show you is teleporting Ellen from one place to another. There are a few ways to be able to achieve this with the kit, and you can find out most of those ways through the component reference guide that we have on the website, as well as in the documentation folder in the project. So I'm going to exit play mode, and still in the interactables folder, I've got this teleporter, which I'm going to put right here. And if we look at the teleporter in the inspector, there's a transition point component here. And right now the transition type is to a different zone. And I don't want to do that. I want to just teleport her maybe back to the beginning of this level. So I'm going to click on different zone and select same scene because it's within this same scene that we'll be teleporting. And right now it doesn't know what to teleport. So I need to select Ellen and click and drag her into the transitioning game object section here. Another thing that it's expecting is a destination. So this looking for the destination transform, right now it doesn't have a position to do that. I can just quickly set that up by dragging in another teleporter from the prefabs folder. Like so. And that's because it's got the same name, it's added a 1 to it. So let's remember that teleporter 1 is at the beginning of the level and the original teleporter is up here. So we don't need to touch this transitioning point at all. We can just leave it as it is. And if we go back to the original teleporter, let's click and drag this teleporter 1 from the hierarchy into the destination transform. So it's taking the position of where this game object is placed, and it will transport Ellen from the originating position to the destination. So we need to change when it transitions. So the transition when option, if we click on that, we've got a few options, and we can do it when on trigger enter. So when we actually walk past it, it'll be able to teleport Ellen. So I'm going to collect the key, I'm going to cheat and jump over the door, and it jumps me straight into the spikes. That's horrible gameplay. So there's the teleportation, that works, but I don't want it that immediate. I want to be able to give the player the chance to interact and then teleport. So I'm going to exit play mode. I'm also going to remove those spikes so I don't end up killing myself every time. And selecting the original teleporter again, which is the one up here. If I change the transition when to interact press, the interact button in this project is set to E. So when I press E, when I'm at the teleporter, I should teleport. So it gives you a bit of a chance to teleport. So if I'm just walking past it, it won't move me back to the beginning again. But if I do press the E key, now it's teleported me. Lastly, let's enable some dialogue to come up on the screen to tell our player what button to press to enable the teleporter. So in our prefabs folder, I'm going to go to UI prefabs, and we have a dialogue canvas here. I'm going to click and drag this into the UI section here. This is just for some organizational purposes, so I know what the UI is. And if I click in this empty space, it's actually grayed out, and that means that it's not enabled. So when we press play, it won't come up automatically with a big dialog box. We need to trigger this to enable when an event happens. So let's create that event now. If I click on the original teleporter, which is the one that I want to walk past to trigger the canvas, it doesn't currently have an event system in at the moment, so I'm going to add component, and I'm going to type in interact, and that's going to come up with all the interact options here. So I want the interact on button 2D, and when selecting these for specific collision interactions, which is what we're using now, selecting the 2D option is important because we are in a 2D game. So I've clicked and added that in, and now I'm going to make sure that only Ellen can walk past this and trigger the event. So on the layers, I'm going to select nothing to clear the selections, and then I'm going to select player. So on enter, we want something to happen. We want to trigger the dialog canvas to say something. So I'm going to add something to the list, find the dialog canvas in the hierarchy, click and drag that in the empty space, and then on the function, I'm going to look at the specific dialog canvas controller function here. And what I want to do is activate canvas with text, and then it's got a little string there. If I type something in here, unlike the animated door, it's actually going to display text in the dialog box. So if I trigger this now, and I walk past it, if I collect the key and jump over it and cheat, it brings up a blank text box. So we want to type something in that function to display. So we want to say press E to teleport. So now when I press play again, now that I've entered in some text there, and collect the key and slowly sink down on the door, now it says press E to teleport. So I can still press E to teleport. So now you can see that it's still appearing on the screen, and that's going to stay on there permanently because we haven't set anything to on exit. So when Ellen walks outside of the collision zone, we haven't set it to remove itself. So that's what we're going to do now. So if we look at the interact on button 2D, we have an on exit where we can put some events to trigger when we leave this green collider box. So I'm going to add one to the list, drag in the dialog canvas from the hierarchy, and select the function from the dialog canvas controller. We've got a deactivate canvas with delay, and here it's expecting a float instead of a string. So it's expecting a number. So we're going to put in a number of 2. I think 2 seconds is about right for this. So now when we exit that green box, it'll wait a little bit before the canvas disappears. And that's it for this session. I hope you enjoyed creating some gameplay with no code with the 2D game kit. You can download this asset off the asset store, and you can also learn more. We have all the getting started guide and documentation on the Learn site. We also have it inside the project as well, so if you need it offline, that's where you can find it. And we also have a forum thread, so if you get stuck or need some ideas, you can go there too. Check out the game that's included with the pack, and you can see how a lot more different gameplay elements are all hooked up together. I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you later.
Okay, so a huge round of applause for Aurora. Thank you so much for doing that training for us. Awesome work, and awesome to see what you and your team have been working on. Thanks as well to Will Goldstone for joining us in the chat and answering questions. Super, super helpful. And so we will be continuing our live trainings here on Unity Connect on Wednesday nights. I will put the link for the events page in the chat, and so I would love to see you here again. We're not going to be streaming on Twitch, so let's see, more Connect events coming up. Put that in the chat for you guys. And we've got a couple announced on Connect. We've got a couple more coming up. We've got a session on machine learning that I'm really excited to be presenting, and then some more stuff will be announced soon. We're going to be doing some stuff from GDC, and we've got some really cool stuff for you there that we will be letting you know about shortly. I encourage you to download and check out the Game Kit project, as you've seen. Let me put up the links for that. And then I'm going to hang out here and take some questions in the chat. We can open it up to slightly broader topics. If you guys have some questions not directly related to the game kits, I'm happy to attempt an answer, whether or not I can provide one. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. It's great to be here with you. We really appreciate your coming and participating. It's super fun. The videos for this will be up on YouTube if you want to review. And yeah, thanks again, and hopefully see you next week. Okay, let me find the assets on the asset store. 2D Game Kit Unity. And I'll link this for you, since I realized, did I link it already? I think I did. But let's make sure we have that linked in the central chat, in case you don't have it already. There we go. And maybe actually, Aurora, do you have the link for the forum thread? Could you post that in the main chat as well? I just want to make sure we have the right one. Yes, Dimitri, yes, we will be doing a machine learning session. We have Arthur Giuliani, who is one of the lead developers on the machine learning team, is going to be doing a session for you guys, which I'll be hosting. Super, super exciting stuff. It's going to be very cool. Yeah, the machine learning stuff is nutty. It's super interesting and super weird. It's just a whole different world of stuff to learn and super cool. So yeah, I'm also eager to check that out and see what he has to present for us. Armin, thank you so much. Glad you appreciated the training and the Game Kit projects. I'm also looking forward to the 3D Game Kit. General questions: how to keep notified about the next Connect event? Follow up on the events page. For now, we are actually working on, so Connect, using Connect in this way for online events is a relatively new functionality. So we're actually working on expanding what the platform can do, and actually providing some notifications is high on our list. So watch the events page. You can register for events. And yeah, we will be working on getting you some better notifications about that as they come up. Yeah, of course you can use Google Calendar. An issue displaying the Connect site correctly on the iPad. Good to know. We'll keep an eye on that. Let's see. Okay, I'm just reading back. Cool. Folks interested in machine learning. That's great. Thanks, Tom. Says he's looking forward to watching the asset develop. Appreciate it. Thanks, Domino. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining. Thanks, John. Thanks again to Aurora for doing the session for us. Great work. Thanks, Philip, Chad, Dimitri. Appreciate it. Awesome. Okay, cool. Chad is asking, can you send Unity members an email of the events? Yeah, no, that's actually something we experimented with for the Hover Racer training, of people having people register with their email for an event. It was something that we did in like a kind of a more manual process, where we had to build out special pages for it. But the fact that, let's see, how many other people in the chat would like to receive an email notification about next events? I'd be curious to hear that, because that's something I'm curious about. Like, how do you guys want to be notified about stuff? Because I would like that. I know Twitch used to do email, right? So maybe that's a good format to stick with. Let's hear it. Because I believe that when you register for an event, we do know your email because it's your Unity email, right? So maybe we could send you an email directly when the event is starting. Let me know what you think about that. Would that be welcome? Okay, cool. John and Tom say yes. Good to know. Yeah, the next session that we've got coming up, we've got the team. Oh, it's actually tomorrow. The team in Southeast Asia are going to be doing a piece on the shader graph. That's actually tomorrow, 11 a.m. GMT. This is something that we're kind of testing out, is having folks doing some stuff, like the guys in Southeast Asia are obviously in a different time zone, but they do primarily do training in English. So Will messages me to say, pretty sure our system can do that for folks. Okay, good to know. I admit I'm still learning Connect myself. This is all relatively new to me. We just switch over to this, and there's still a few little bumps and stuff along the way that I'm getting used to. So forgive me if I'm giving incorrect information at times. But yeah, we've got a session tomorrow. The folks in Southeast Asia are going to do in the morning, at least morning according to the UK. So check that out if you're interested. And then on next week, on the 28th, we'll be doing a session on getting started with 360 video, which should be very interesting. And we have Sarah Stumbo guesting for that, and she's worked extensively on that project. And I'm really eager to see what she has. We have like a new template project for that, which I believe I linked from the event page. Let me just see if I did. I see a couple. Yes, I linked to the blog post, which has info about where you can learn more. And then she's going to be doing a presentation for us that should be super interesting for those of you guys who are interested in 360 video. Awesome. Hey, Dimitri. Yeah, I'm sorry that you missed a part of the stream. I did try to put a notice up on the Learn page about us moving, and I actually have now taken down the other events there so nobody can get confused. What I did last time was I put up a kind of a fake Twitch stream that just said, hey, come on over to Connect. But then I got a few people being like, what is this? Is this spam? And it seemed like maybe they were getting more confused about the kind of manual redirect that I was doing there. But yeah, I mean, we are not going to be changing platforms all the time. I think we were on Twitch for 3 or 4 years, and we intend to stay on Connect for a good long while. So hopefully we won't be having too many more changes like that. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you for your time joining us. Happy afternoon to you, if that's what time it is where you are. It's 9:30 over here in the UK. 6:30 a.m. in Tokyo. Holy cow, Soldier Dan Huffman up bright and early with us. Thank you for joining, man. Wow. You are clearly a morning person. Yes, Philip. Sorry that you missed a few minutes. Yeah, I don't have a great, really clear way to kind of redirect everybody. But what I've done is I actually, because people were getting confused, I pulled everything off of the other live page. And there is a note there saying, hey, join us on Unity Connect. So hopefully folks will be able to make the transition that way. But yeah, I get that it's a little Will is asking, what's the next one this time zone? The next one is our 360 video session, which will be 8 p.m. next Wednesday, February 28th. Yeah, getting started with 360 video. I'll link it actually here. Let's link to the event. And then I've got some more stuff that I'm going to be announcing soon. So watch this space. Cool. Yeah, I've linked the 360 video session in the middle of the chat, so you can register for that. Nice. All right, let me just back read in the chat, see if I missed anybody's questions or comments. All right, seems like we're doing good. Excellent. Good. Okay. So I think we're on track. Seems like Dimitri, yes. Today's live stream was 8 p.m. my time, 8 p.m. GMT, UK time. It's usually 9 p.m. for me because I'm based in Berlin these days. Thanks, Philip. Thanks for understanding. Yeah, you know, change is always a little bit painful, right? But just for the best, I believe. Yeah. All right, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind things down on the mic over here. I will keep the chat window open if you guys have last questions you want to post in there. Just want to say thanks so much again to Aurora for the session. Thanks to Will for joining and helping out with the questions. I'll be back with you guys next week for 360 video with Sarah. That should be super fun. So register for that on the Connect page, and make sure to check out the 2D game kit. If you haven't already. Download Unity 2017.3 and all of that good stuff. My name is Matt Shell, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.